The first book I've chosen is The New Mrs Clifton by Elizabeth Buchan, and which has just come out in paperback. It tells the story of a married couple arriving in London. His name is Gus. He's been in the army and he's ended up in Berlin working in army intelligence. He's returned to the family home in Clapham Common, where his two sisters are still living. But the big change is he has turned up with a new wife who nobody knows, and she's German. And this decision has enormous repercussions on a number of people's lives. We're used to thinking about the upheaval, the massive upheaval from the Second World War, and imagining what it must have been like to come back and get back to an ordinary life. You know, there was all this encouragement. Well, the war's over now. You know, now we're going back to our ordinary selves. But of course, people didn't go back to their ordinary selves because they were extremely changed in many ways, and society was enormously changed. So here is this man who's experienced warfare and been involved in something that we're not quite sure was horrible in some way, but not specific. Here he is with a thin Berliner who had worked with him in Germany. That's all we know. And now she turns up in Clapham Common, where two sisters are absolutely amazed at this decision, and where, next door but one, there is somebody who thought she was his fiancée. And so this is also a huge shock to her. But throughout the novel, she has this marvellous structure where she builds up all these different little insights into different relationships. All her minor characters all reflect a little moment of British experience. And although that might sound a bit structured, it works terribly well. I'm not going to talk about the plot because the plot is fantastic and it would be a great spoiler to go through the plot now. But just as an example, here is somebody who has never lived in England before. She's arriving. She knows that it's going to be difficult. And after she's settled in for a couple of days, she goes to the baker's to pick up her loaf of bread. And in this scene, you have the marvellous moment. There's a long queue, shabby women, all waiting, queuing as everybody was, waiting for this bread. And of course, the minute she opens her mouth to ask for a loaf of bread, the queue stiffens. Oh my God, it's a German. What's a German doing over here now? We hate them. And one of the young men working in the bakery immediately says, "You're a kraut. What are you doing here? We don't want you here." And he's reprimanded by his boss. But there's a lot of, muttering in the queue. And she feels extremely awkward. And she just repeats her request. "I've just come to buy a loaf of bread." And eventually she gets out of the shop. Various people make very rude remarks about her. But when she's outside, a woman who is standing in front of her turns around and says, "Don't take any notice. When my husband was wounded in Germany, a housewife gave him a glass of water. We're not all the same." And so she introduces a note of, well, some people thought this, but other people did actually speak up. So I read it immediately after the Brexit referendum. And at that time, when there'd been so much consideration about British values and should we stay, should we go? And suddenly some of perhaps our ideas about tolerance were being questioned. But there were so many parallels in this upheaval in society. And lots of the people we meet, the characters we meet, have been wounded in the war, have lost their husband, killed in the RAF, have had all kinds of changes brought upon them. And the sheer shabbiness and horribleness of life. Rationed food, not enough of it. It was so terribly cold all the time because things weren't heated. It made me feel how spoilt we are today. Our lives are so much more comfortable. But she's brilliant at bringing in all these details. And it's very much the civilian view of the war experience, which hasn't been explored all that much. And that was one of the big interests in it for me.